The LIV golf saga continues to unfold as Greg Norman and the PGA Tour lock horns in what seems like an endless battle. However, it looks like the Aussie's involvement with the Saudi League has also started to hurt his reputation outside the PGA, as he's been denied an invitation to the British Open. What was the reasoning behind this decision, though, and how did Norman react? Well, keep watching to find out. First up, Greg Norman has been under fire for LIV golf shenanigans. When it comes to some of the greatest golfers of all time, Greg Norman's name would definitely make the list. However, since his retirement, the 67-year-old has been on a bit of a downhill trajectory, trying to become the ultimate golf villain. Like, he's been involved in so many controversial ventures that it's not even funny. But to be fair to him, he stuck to his goal of making his own golf league that can uproot the PGA Tour's monopoly. Even though his efforts in the 90s were quickly squashed by the Golfing Association, his business with the Saudis is a whole nother beast. Now, the LIV Golf Series has been fairly successful and has even nabbed some top PGA stars like Phil Mickelson and Brooks Koepka. However, it's the fact that the Saudi government is pouring billions of dollars into this upstart league that's been so unsettling for everyone in the community. Like, no one minds another competition trying to make its mark and revolutionize the game. When it's done to sports wash a nation's horrendous human rights record, though, then things start to get a bit shady. With that said, Greg Norman's been super adamant that there's nothing wrong with receiving Saudi funding, and has even tried to brush all the concerns under the rug. Oh, and let's not forget when he nonchalantly dismissed the questions about the alleged murder of a journalist. So yeah, he hasn't had the greatest track record when it comes to public appearances. However, up until now, that's only kinda ruined his reputation and hasn't resulted in actual action against him. With the upcoming British Open, though, all of that's about to change. Up next, the British Open closes its doors on Greg Norman. Now, Greg Norman's easily one of the greatest British Open champions. After all, he's won the tournament twice in his decorated career. However, after his LIV golf shenanigans, it seems like that relationship between him and the tournament has kind of gotten sour, especially when you consider the fact that the British Open's all about tradition and legacy, while the Saudi League's anything but that. So when the golf tournament announced that the Australian wouldn't be welcome at its 150th anniversary, it ruffled some feathers in his camp. Obviously, they didn't just kick him out of the ceremony or anything. It was as civilized as things can be. Instead, the Royal and Ancient Golf Club, or St. Andrews, released a statement saying that they'd reached out to Norman to let him know beforehand that he shouldn't show up for the weekend's festivities. The statement mentioned that the 150th Open is an extremely important milestone for golf, so they decided that it was best to not have Norman in order to preserve the championship and its heritage. And according to the golf club, the 67-year-old's appearance would jeopardize that and take the focus away from the tournament itself. Having said that, they did bookend the statement by expressing their desire to work things out and improve the circumstances in the future for Greg to attend the event. But wait, how does Greg Norman jeopardize the championship? St. Andrews' statement was pretty vague and skirted around a lot of things. So what did it mean by preserving the championship and its heritage? Like, how could Greg Norman attending a celebration event ruin that? Well, the answer's pretty obvious, really. Even though it wasn't explicitly mentioned in the press release, we all know the reason behind Norman's new ban. Yep, it's the Saudi Golf League. You see, over the past few months, virtually every major golfing event has been overshadowed by all of this LIV golf drama. Like, even when we were in the thick of it during the US Open, people just couldn't stop talking about how this new league would defeat the PGA Tour, or how suspended players were still taking part in the tournament. No matter where you went, you couldn't escape it. And that kinda angered a lot of players, and the USGA as well, since, again, it took the focus away from the incredible action we were getting on the golf course. In fact, many players looked riled up after the event and gave some pretty impassioned speeches about how this new upstart league's the real devil. So the British Open management probably had a similar thought process, because if the CEO of LIV Golf showed up at their event, all eyes would definitely be on him. Besides, no one really wants the focus to shift away from the 150th anniversary event, which is a pretty big deal in and of itself. Now, what was Greg Norman's response? Greg Norman's probably used to getting shunned and criticized by now. After all, the man's been in this business for decades at this point and has been the quote-unquote golf villain for quite some time. On top of that, he's a cunning operator and knows exactly what to say to improve his own numbers and clout, so we weren't surprised when he decided to respond to the St. Andrews ban. In his rather dejected statement, the Australian expressed his disappointment by saying that he would have expected the R&A to stay above all the drama given their position in golf. However, sadly, it seems like they've gone down the petty road instead. Norman then pleaded his case by saying that he's done nothing but promote and grow the game of golf globally, both on and off the golf course. Besides, someone doing it for over 4 decades deserves a level of respect that's way above what he's currently being given. With that said, does Greg Norman deserve this treatment? We've already established that Greg Norman's one of the greatest British Open champions out there, and this tournament's got a special place in his heart too. note, since this is the only major tournament on his Hall of Fame resume. So even though he's known to manipulate the media and fan sentiments with his statements, we wouldn't be surprised if he was actually hurt by this one. Is it fair to treat one of your legends like this though? Well, that's a complicated question that needs some context. You see, it's not like Norman's gonna arrive at the anniversary event and start promoting his tour. It's just the attention he attracts is pretty unwarranted, and you can't avoid that when you're at a party like that. To be fair to the Australian, however, that isn't even necessarily his fault, because at the end of the day, he's just trying to establish a rival league to the PGA Tour. Now, of course, there are some concerns about Saudi involvement and everything, which are obviously valid. Plus, no one knows what other stuff the 67-year-old could say if he's asked a tricky question that he hasn't prepared for. Like, we could already imagine the headlines being about how Norman made a controversial statement at the British Open anniversary event. So perhaps the R&A just doesn't want to get involved in this drama. Having said that, it's not like everyone else who's going to be attending the event is an angel. For instance, the Aussie recently criticized the PGA Tour for its double standards, saying that they continue to work with sponsors who are doing business in Saudi Arabia, which is a bit disingenuous considering how much they've criticized him for the same reason. On top of that, you've got LIV golf players taking part in the British Open as well, just like how they were part of the US Open. And in a way, it just doesn't make sense to invite the league's players but not the CEO, who, again, is a legend of the tournament. And finally, how does Norman get re-invited to the party? Now, if you read the R&A statement closely, it mentions that they'd welcome Greg Norman with open arms if the circumstances allow them to. What exactly does that mean though? Like, could we see the 67-year-old attending the event next year? Well, to get into the good books of the R&A, he'd probably have to cut his ties with the upstart Saudi League. Of course, that's pretty much impossible at this point since he's not only the CEO of the new series, but also the face of it. Plus, he seems to be executing his plan to perfection and is giving a tough time to the PGA Tour, so we don't really see him leaving this massive venture just so he could attend a party. With that said, it's also entirely possible that things are just less volatile next year and that both the PGA and Norman would have moved past the drama to coexist. And if things do calm down, there's no reason to believe that Greg Norman would be prevented from attending the British Open next year. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think that the R&A is justified in its decision to bar Norman? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.